Honorable Foreign Minister, Distinguished Foreign Secretary, UN Resident Coordinator, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and thank you very much for joining us today to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. We will begin with the recitation from the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
I would first of all like to request the Honorable Foreign Secretary to kindly deliver his introductory remarks, please. Sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Foreign Minister, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, UN Resident Coordinator, Chairman NDMA, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a good afternoon. I welcome you to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs today to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. We are pleased to collaborate with the Office of the UN Resident Coordinator in Islamabad in organization of this event. Pakistan has always been an ardent supporter of multilateralism. It is a vital component of Pakistan's foreign policy and has become part of our ethos. We participate actively across all pillars of the work of the United Nations and its affiliated institutions, spanning the primary areas of international peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights. Be it agenda setting or policy formulation, normative development or promotional activities, assumption of leadership positions or constructive support, provision of troops for peacekeeping missions in conflict-ridden regions, or hosting one of the world's largest refugee population for the longest time period, Pakistan has always strived to remain in the forefront of the United Nations, in word and in deed. Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York, Ambassador Munir Akram, incidentally present here as well, is currently serving as the President of the Economic and Social Council, the ECOSOC. This is the 5th time that Pakistan has had the honor of presiding over this important body. We were also gratified with the overwhelming support received by Pakistan for its re-election to the Human Rights Council last week, again for the 5th term since the HRC's establishment in 2006. Pakistan has also had the privilege of being an elected member of the Security Council for 7 two-year terms. This is in addition to the numerous other policy-making organs and elected bodies of the UN where Pakistan has served or continues to serve with dedication and commitment to consensus building. Distinguished guests, the complex challenges faced by the international community today are a stark reminder of the need of cooperative multilateralism. The COVID-19 pandemic illustrates the oneness of humanity and further underscores the requirement to find collective solutions. As noted by Prime Minister Imran Khan in his address to the UN General Assembly last month, and I quote, "The United Nations should be made fully responsive to the challenges of our times," unquote. The United Nations has always been a strong partner of Pakistan in our socio-economic development. Many UN agencies, funds, and programs whose representatives are present here today are active in the country, contributing to the nation's efforts towards the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals and helping us deal with various emergencies such as COVID-19 and desert locust infestation. I take this opportunity to thank them on behalf of the people and government of Pakistan. Distinguished guests, this day also reminds us about the unfulfilled promise that was made over 7 decades ago by the United Nations to the Kashmiri people. The people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir continue to endure the worst forms of repression and denial of fundamental rights, including their inalienable right to self-determination. Pakistan remains the gross and systematic human rights abuses that are being committed with impunity in IIOJK by the Indian occupation forces. A just and lasting solution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the relevant UN Security Council resolutions is indispensable for international peace and security, for protecting the rights of the oppressed Kashmiri people, and for unlocking the trade and economic potential of the region. Distinguished guests, insofar as today's celebrations are concerned, I draw your attention to the special commemorative postage stamp to be unveiled by the Foreign Minister in a short while. This stamp is being issued to mark the 75th anniversary of the UN, and we express our profound gratitude to Pakistan Post for partnering with us in this endeavor. We also have organized a photo exhibition. The key theme on display includes Pakistan's contributions to UN peacekeeping, especially women participation, the role of the United Nations Military Observers Group in India and Pakistan, UNMOGIP, visits of the UN Secretary General and the President of the UN General Assembly to Pakistan this year, completion of 40 years of hosting Afghan refugees in Pakistan, and Pakistan's senior level participation at the United Nations. I invite you to visit the photo exhibition after this ceremony is over. Let me conclude by reaffirming Pakistan's unwavering commitment to the fulfillment of the objectives and purposes of the UN Charter. Pakistan will continue to participate actively in that endeavor in cooperation with member states to build a world where conflict is outlawed and equitable prosperity for all is pursued in conditions of peace and security. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. I now invite the Honorable Foreign Minister to please come to the stage and deliver his keynote address.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. UN Resident Coordinator, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I extend a very warm welcome to you all for joining us today to celebrate the landmark 75th anniversary of the United Nations. I'm grateful to the UN Resident Coordinator and his team for co-hosting this event with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Born out of the ashes of World War II, 75 years ago, the United Nations was founded to save the succeeding generations from the scourge of war, to uphold fundamental human rights and dignity, to establish justice and to promote social progress and better standards of life. I wish to recall a famous saying by Pakistan's founding father, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, in 1948. Our foreign policy is one of friendliness and goodwill towards all nations of the world. We do not cherish aggressive designs against any country or nation. We believe in principles of honesty and fair play in national and international dealings and are prepared to make our utmost contribution to the promotion of peace and prosperity among the nations of the world. Pakistan will never be found lacking in extending its material and moral support to the oppressed and suppressed peoples of the world and in upholding the principles of the UN Charter. These lofty ideals continue to inspire and guide Pakistan's foreign policy. The UN Day reminds us of our collective responsibility to abide by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and lends an opportunity to renew our commitment to noble ideals enshrined in it. Distinguished guests, we've gathered here at a time when the foundational pillars of United Nations are under stress. While unilateralist, populist, and xenophobic tendencies are rising, Pakistan remains committed to the promotion of multilateralism. United Nations is a central pillar of the multilateral architecture and provides formidable support to human endeavors for collectively addressing complex challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan's contribution to the UN peacekeeping is one of the most visible manifestations of our commitment to multilateralism. Pakistan is one of the longest serving and largest contributors to UN peacekeeping. Since 1960, we have contributed over 200,000 peacekeepers to 46 peacekeeping missions around the world. More than 150 of our bravest have rendered the ultimate sacrifice in this cause. Pakistan also continues to co-host one of the oldest missions, peacekeeping missions, the United Nations Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan, Unveiling. Pakistan also continues to host 3 million registered and unregistered Afghan refugees, which remains one of the most protracted refugees crises in the world. Distinguished guests, development of friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples is enshrined in the UN Charter. It is deplorable that these universal ideals continue to be violated and defied with impunity, nowhere more conspicuously than in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, where a just struggle of a people to realize their inalienable right to self-determination is being suppressed with brutal use of force. India's gross and systematic violations of human rights in the Indian occupied Kashmir have been extensively documented by international human rights and humanitarian organizations, as well as the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights in its successive reports. Led by Hindutva ideology, the BJP RSS regime in India is incessantly resorting to aggressive posturing against Pakistan and other neighboring countries that seriously imperils national peace, regional peace and security. The UN Security Council must exercise its legal and political authority to ensure the full implementation of its resolutions on Kashmir, stipulating a free and fair plebiscite under UN auspices for the exercise of Kashmiris' right to self-determination. Distinguished guests, Pakistan is one of the few countries which have successfully restricted the spread of coronavirus. Our government followed a strategy of smart lockdowns to ensure that we save people from dying from the virus and from dying from hunger. The threat, however, is not over yet, and we continue to actively seek following of necessary SOPs. In the same vein, Pakistan was also able to combat the threat of desert locust, the worst of its kind in more than 25 years. I wish to commend the role of the World Health Organization, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and other financial institutions in helping the government to calibrate its response for overcoming these two emergencies simultaneously. This is yet another example of how international solidarity and cooperation can best serve the humanity. I also thank all other UN agencies, funds and programs working in the country for their partnership with Pakistan in helping us advance our socio-economic development objectives. We will continue to work with the UN Secretary General and the remarkable UN country team in Pakistan, ably led and coordinated by Julian Harris, for the attainment of sustainable development goals. Lastly, given the presence here of a large number of heads of missions based in Islamabad, I take this opportunity to reiterate our request for their valuable support for the candidature of Pakistan's Chairman Senate, Senator Sadiq Sunjarani, for the post of President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, for which the elections will be held between 1st to the 4th of November 2020 now. I wish to conclude by reiterating Pakistan's firm and abiding commitment to multilateralism, with the United Nations playing a central role. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will now see a video message from the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency, Mr. Antonio Guterres.
Dear friends, the 75th anniversary of the United Nations falls in the middle of a global pandemic. Our founding mission is more critical than ever: to promote human dignity, protect human rights, respect international law, and save humanity from war. When the pandemic hit, I called for a global ceasefire. In our world today, we have one common enemy: COVID-19. Now is the time for a stepped-up push for peace to achieve a global ceasefire. The clock is ticking. And we must also make peace with our planet. The climate emergency threatens life itself. We must mobilize the whole world to reach carbon neutrality, net zero emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050. A growing number of cities, countries and companies have already pledged to meet this goal. Around the world, we must do more to end human suffering from poverty, inequality, hunger and hatred, and fight discrimination on the basis of race, religion, gender or any other distinction. The months of pandemic have seen a horrific rise in violence against women and girls. We must build on progress. A remarkable global collaboration is underway for a safe, affordable and accessible COVID-19 vaccine for all. Sustainable Development Goals give us an inspiring blueprint for recovering better. We face colossal challenges. With global solidarity and cooperation, we can overcome them. That's what United Nations is all about. On this anniversary, I ask people everywhere to join together. United Nations not only stands with you, United Nations belongs to you and is you with the people. Together, let us uphold the enduring values of the United Nations Charter. Let us build on our advances across the decades. Let us realize our shared vision of a better world for all.
I now invite the Honorable Mr. Julian Harnice, the UN Resident Coordinator in Islamabad, to please share his views.
Foreign Minister, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends. Firstly, some thanks. My great thanks to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for having had the idea and having organised this with us, and also a big thanks to our friends from Serena for the refreshments. Foreign Minister, firstly, thank you very much for your kind words. As you noted, we, the United Nations, were created on October the 24th, 1945, in San Francisco by our 51 founding members. As you eloquently stated, our purpose has been to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, and I go further, in the equal rights of men and women, of nations large and small, to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law can be maintained, and to promote social progress and better standards of life in a larger freedom. A month and a half after its creation, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan became a signatory of the United Nations Charter on the 30th September 1947, and since then, Pakistan has both contributed to and benefited from the United Nations. The United Nations has indeed saved millions from the scourge of war. Our world is now a safer and more peaceful one than at any time in human history. Since the creation of our United Nations, both the frequency and the lethality of conflicts have plummeted. Pakistan, as you rightly noted, Foreign Minister, has been a leader in peacekeeping. Its first mission was in the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1960, a country in which I myself served. And since then, it has sent over 200,000 troops to 46 missions in 28 countries. Today, more than 7,000 personnel deployed in 9 of our 14 missions. And Pakistan is the third largest provider of peacekeepers in the world. Regrettably, as you noted, closer to home, the dispute over the state of Jammu and Kashmir has yet to be resolved. And I recall the statement of the Secretary General that the final status of Jammu and Kashmir must be settled by peaceful means and in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. Nonetheless, since 1949, we have contributed to reducing cross-border violence through the transparent and neutral reporting of the United Nations Military Observers Group in India and Pakistan. I'm proud to say that one of our greatest contributions to human rights has been the work of the United Nations on decolonization. When we were created, a third of the world's population lived in non-self-governing territories and were dependent upon colonial powers. Our United Nations has gone from 51 member states to today 193 sovereign states. On human rights, Pakistan has become a signatory to our most important human rights instruments, the Universal Declaration of Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, amongst others. A recent reaffirmation of Pakistan's commitment to furthering human rights has indeed been the re-election to the Human Rights Council. Together, we have achieved previously unimaginable social progress and better standards of living for all. And here are some examples. On the 8th of May 1980, Smallpox was eradicated by the World Health Organization, a terrible disease that in the 20th century alone killed 300 million people around the world and had been particularly fatal in South Asia. 10 years ago, on the 14th of October 2010, the Food and Agriculture Organization was able to announce the elimination of rinderpest, a disease that had decimated the livelihoods of millions of families. In Pakistan, 23 United Agencies funds and programs bring their technical expertise and global good practices to support the government and to work with civil society to advance standards of living and to mitigate the consequences of disaster and violence. Responded to the 2005 earthquake, the 2010 floods, and the consequences of the violence in the then federally administered tribal areas. And today we are working together with the NDMA and the PDMA for the people of rural Sindh who are affected by the ongoing floods. For 41 years, Pakistan has been a generous host of Afghan refugees, supported by our member states through the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. And today, 3 million Afghans, refugees, continue to benefit from that hospitality. These development actions are coordinated through the Economic and Social Council, and so it was a great joy for us that Ambassador Munia Akram, today present with us, has been elected as its 76th president. Congratulations, sir. Today, after 75 years of progress, our multilateral system remains as vital and as needed as on the day of our creation. The coronavirus pandemic and the international response guided by the World Health Organization is showing how multilateral action is both effective and essential to saving lives and livelihoods. Further, a momentous opportunity stands before us. We are within arm's reach of eradicating polio. The last few cases are here in Pakistan and in our neighbor Afghanistan. In a few short years, we here, sitting together today, could, together with the government workers and our colleagues from the United Nations Children's Fund and the World Health Organization, remove this threat to our children forever. The Afghan peace process is another historic opportunity, and we salute the positive role of the government of Pakistan in resolving this conflict. The UN is committed to supporting the process and building on political agreements to connect people across the region so that all within it can taste the fruits of peace. Alongside these are the day-to-day challenges which require our dedication and constant effort, reaching the Sustainable Development Goals, mitigating climate change, and taking human rights from laws in books into changed behaviors, with a particular emphasis on the rights of women and girls. I close these words by celebrating with our colleagues from the World Food Programme their Nobel Peace Prize, a recognition of their extraordinary work around the world and here in Pakistan, where with the government they are supporting 1.5 million of society's most vulnerable. This prize is also a validation of the continuing relevance of the United Nations and is the 12th Nobel Peace Prize awarded to the United Nations family. Pakistan our Aqwam Muttahida Zindabad.
Thank you very much, Julian. We will now hear the views of a Pakistani female UN peacekeeper, Major Sadia Khan. She has served with distinction in UNAMID, the peacekeeping mission in Darfur, Sudan. Let me also acknowledge here the presence amongst today of Ms. Shehzadi Gulfam, a Pakistani police officer who won the UN Award for Female Peacekeepers in 2011 for her meritorious services in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, and Timor-Leste. That's it. And over to Major Sadia Khan, please, madam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Foreign Minister, Foreign Secretary, UN Resident Coordinator, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. After 75 years of its genesis, United Nations is providing its services in some of the world's most challenging places. One of the hallmarks of UN is a diverse workforce that comes from various backgrounds and cultures, may it be civilians, military, or police. These three work as one in all UN peace operations. However, with time, the member states and UN have realized that in order to effectively make any peace operation successful, women have to be included increasingly in the peacekeeping family. In 2010, Security Council Resolution 1325 was passed that provides three P's as provisions, that is, to ensure prevention of the conflict, increase protection and participation of women in all UN peace and security efforts. Moreover, the Action for Peacekeeping A4P Declaration of Shared Commitments calls for an expansion of role and contribution of women in UN operations. Consequently, member states have gradually increased the number of women peacekeepers who are now contributing at all tiers while providing a fresh and genuine perspective in planning operations and decision making. Till now, 2 of the UN missions have been headed by women force commanders. However, the world has a long way to go. In 1993, women made up 1% of the deployed forces. Today, they are 4.8% of the military contingent and 10.9% of the formed police units. On the 75th Raising Day of UN, this pledge needs to be reaffirmed by all. Pakistan has manifested its commitment to A4P initiative in this regard promptly and effectively. We have a deployed force of 84 women peacekeepers in Congo, Central African Republic, Sudan, South Sudan, and Cyprus as staff officers at individual level and as female engagement teams at contingent level. They have played an effective role in building trust and confidence of women and children in the local communities through community outreach programs, gender advocacy, vocational training, awareness and engagement sessions, psychological support, medical camps, as well as training of female staff for national capacity building. Their visibility in uniform has not only increased female participation in peace operations, but also helped across the cultural barriers, where it was not possible for men in uniform to access the information and address the issue of conflict. Women in uniform by proving that they can perform in any role, however difficult the circumstances may be, while not compromising on the standards of UN. I thank you all.
Thank you, Madam. Turning to the last speaker of today, I have the pleasure of inviting a bright young Pakistani woman, Ms. Shanza Faik, who has recently joined the Pakistan Foreign Service family and is presently undergoing training at the Foreign Service Academy. She will share with us a youth perspective on the UN Day.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. The Honorable Foreign Minister, respected Foreign Secretary, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Excellencies and officers of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, welcome to today's event and a very good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, the world that we meander within today is home to the largest generation of young people in history, offering 1.8 billion reasons for the UN to stand by their side. Close to 90% of them live in developing countries such as Pakistan, where they continue to constitute a significant proportion of the population. Connected to each other like never before, young people want to and already are contributing to the resilience of their communities, proposing innovative solutions, driving social progress, and inspiring political change in urban as well as rural contexts. Ladies and gentlemen, young people today want the sustainable and peaceful world envisioned in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. UN young leaders such as Hadika Bashir and Vincent Loka have respectively set up organizations such as Girls United for Human Rights, which are working for the protection of women's rights in rural KP, as well as Water Roam, which aims to provide clean drinking water in Indonesia. Moreover, Speeches made by people such as Malala Yousafzai and Greta Thunberg at the UN are consolidating the position of the UN as a global leader in engaging the youth. Ladies and gentlemen, UN youth ambassadors are helping to develop linkages between local and educational institutions as well as the UN. Platforms such as the UN Youth Forum are allowing the youth to spearhead dialogues on issues that will shape the world of tomorrow. Thousands of young UN interns across the world are engaging in symbiotic relationships with senior management by briefing them on youth issues and instilling their localized experiences within the UN framework. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the youth that is engaging in digital diplomacy, participating in symposiums and authoring papers in order to highlight the plight of the oppressed Kashmiris in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir as well as Palestine. Moreover, youth-led peace-building organizations such as the United Network of Young Peace Builders are working with youth in conflict-torn areas in order to uphold the principles and the purposes of the UN Charter and realize the goals of UN Security Resolution Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, around the world, young women and men are striving for justice, inclusion, gender equality, and human rights. The onus lies on us here today to adopt a multilateral and an integrated approach in order to make the most of the power of the youth as drivers of international peace and security, torchbearers of human rights, and engines of social development in order to realize the fundamental objectives and goals of the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamsa. This concludes the first segment of our event. We would now move to the unveiling of the commemorative postage stamp, followed by cutting of a cake and a visit of the photo exhibition. I would therefore request the Honorable Foreign Minister, sir, if you could please unveil the postage stamp on this side, and I would also request the Director General of Pakistan Post, Madam, if you could kindly accompany the Foreign Minister along with the Foreign Secretary and the UN Resident Coordinator, please. On the screen, you can see what the stamp looks like. Sir, to the cake, please, if you don't mind.
Peacekeeping.
I would now invite all distinguished guests to please follow the Foreign Minister in viewing the photo exhibition and then join him at the refreshment stands. This also concludes the formal segment of our ceremony. I thank you once again very much for your participation. Thank you.